80 days. That's all that's left before the midterms decide who runs the Senate, and my latest forecast, built off 100,000 simulations run just this morning, is projecting at least 2 confirmed flips, 2 more that are highly likely, and 4 additional races close enough that either party could realistically win them. 8 states total that could reshape the balance of power in Washington. So let's build this entire map from scratch, state by state, and see exactly where things stand right now. We'll start with the states nobody's seriously fighting over, races where one party is sitting above a 95% win probability. On the Republican side, this list is long and uncontested. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. None of these are worth a second thought. Democrats have their own version of that stability. Oregon, Illinois, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, and Virginia. Same story, lockdown, no drama. With those safe seats settled, Republicans hold a slight 42-41 edge. That leaves 17 races still on the board, and these are the ones that are actually going to determine who controls the Senate for the second half of Trump's term. Now let's move into the likely category. Races where one side holds between an 80 and 95% win probability. Still competitive on paper, but the favorite is pretty clear. We'll go from least to most competitive. Colorado is the safest of this group. John Hickenlooper sits at a 94.6% win probability against Republican Mark Baisley, projected to win by more than 16 points. He's led consistently all cycle. And remember, he originally flipped this seat from Republican control back in 2020 by just 9.3 points. He's now on track to more than double that margin. New Mexico is right behind it. Ben Ray Lujan carries a 92% win probability against Larry Marker, projected to win by just under 12 points, again, nearly double his original 2020 margin of 6.1 points. Both of these stay comfortably in the likely Democratic column. On the Republican side, Mississippi lands here too. Cindy Hyde-Smith sits at 91.9%, solid, but not overwhelming for a state Trump carried by 23 points in 2024. She's simply not a beloved incumbent, and that's dragging her number down slightly. She still wins. Kansas follows the same pattern. Roger Marshall holds a 91% win probability in a state Trump won by 16 points. Another case of an underwhelming incumbent keeping what should be a lock just slightly competitive. South Carolina is a genuinely interesting story here. Following Lindsey Graham's death, his sister Darlene Graham was appointed to fill the vacancy and is now fighting to win the seat outright. She first has to survive a runoff against Ralph Norman in the special GOP primary. She's currently a heavy favorite there, sitting around a 75% chance of becoming the nominee. If she clears that hurdle, she carries an 89.4% win probability into the general election against Democrat Annie Andrews, with our simulations projecting a 9.3-point victory. Florida is likely red as well. Ashley Moody, the appointed incumbent finishing out the remainder of Marco Rubio's term, holds an 89.1% win probability against Alexander Bingman, projected to win by 7.2 points. Florida has become dramatically more Republican over the past decade, and Moody hasn't dipped below 80% at any single point in this entire campaign. Trump carried the state by 13 points in 2024, and there's simply no realistic Democratic path here right now. Minnesota goes likely blue. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, serving under Governor Tim Walz, holds an 83.7% win probability against Republican Michelle Fischbach, projected to win by just under 8 points. Democrats have won every single presidential race in Minnesota since 1976 and every Senate race since 2006. That kind of structural advantage doesn't disappear overnight. 2 more likely races round out this category. New Hampshire goes likely Democratic, but just barely. Chris Pappas faces off against former Governor John Sununu to replace the retiring Jeanne Shaheen, and our simulations have Pappas winning by roughly 6 points. New Hampshire leans left at the federal level. Even though Republicans have dominated the governor's race here since 2016, Democrats have simply been much stronger on both the presidential and Senate levels, and that pattern should hold. And then North Carolina, by far the most probable flip on the entire map. Tom Tillis is retiring after 2 terms, and Republicans have nominated former RNC chair Michael Whatley to face former 2-term Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. Cooper's name recognition and statewide popularity are giving him an 80.8% win probability, projected to win by 5.8 points. Market odds on prediction platforms actually put Democratic win probability even higher, at 91%. Despite Trump carrying North Carolina in all 3 of his presidential campaigns, holding this seat is going to be an uphill battle for the GOP. With all the solid and likely states now filled in, both parties are sitting exactly tied at 46 seats each. 8 races remain, and we're now moving into the lean category, where win probabilities sit between 65 and 80%. Every one of these is a genuine potential flip, though one side still holds a real edge. Texas leans red, just barely missing the cutoff for likely. Ken Paxton, who knocked out John Cornyn in the primary, holds a 79.5% win probability against James Tallarico, projected to win by roughly 5 points. That's a real underperformance compared to Trump's 13-point margin in 2024, but it's still very likely a Republican win. Alaska leans red with an identical 79.5% win probability for Dan Sullivan, who's seeking a 3rd term against Mary Peltola. Our simulations have him winning by just under 5 points. Alaska hasn't gone Democratic at the presidential level since Lyndon Johnson carried it in 1964, and Trump won it by 13 points in 2024. That history is difficult to overcome even with a strong challenger like Peltola. Georgia leans blue. Jon Ossoff is seeking a 2nd term after his razor-thin 1.2-point runoff win back in 2020, and this time he's in a considerably stronger position, a 79.3% win probability, projected to win by 4.8 points. This state remains one of the most competitive in the country every single cycle. Trump won it by just 2 points in 2024, 4 years after Biden became the first Democrat to carry Georgia since Bill Clinton in 1996. Nebraska leans red. Pete Ricketts holds a 78% win probability against independent Dan Osborne, a race that's far closer than Nebraska usually produces given Trump's 19 and 20-plus point margins there in the last 2 presidential cycles. Osborne came within 6.7 points of unseating Nebraska's other senator in 2024, and this time he's projected to lose by a similarly tight 4.9 points. Still a Republican win, but not remotely comfortable. Iowa leans red as well. Ashley Hinson holds roughly a 75% win probability against Josh Turek, projected to win by 4.8 points, a clear underperformance compared to Trump's 13-point 2024 margin. But this is an open seat with no incumbent, and those races tend to run closer in Iowa regardless of the underlying partisan lean. Maine tilts red, and this is where the numbers get genuinely tight. Susan Collins sits at just 63.3% win probability against new Democratic nominee Troy Jackson, who stepped in after Graham Plattner's campaign collapsed. Our simulations project Collins winning by roughly 2 points. She's the only Republican senator running in a state her party didn't carry in the last presidential election. Harris won Maine by 6.8 points in 2024. But Collins has consistently defied polling before, including a nearly 10-point win in 2020 when every single survey had her losing by 5 points or more. Ohio and Michigan are the 2 closest races on the entire map. In Ohio, Jon Husted, the appointed incumbent who took over after J.D. Vance became vice president, holds just a 56.4% win probability against Sherrod Brown, the former 3-term senator trying to reclaim his old seat. Our model projects Husted winning by only about 1 point. Brown lost his 2024 re-election bid by 3.6 points to a considerably more controversial opponent than Husted, which is part of why this race is genuinely up for grabs. Ohio tilts red, but barely. And finally, Michigan, the most likely Republican flip on the entire board. Gary Peters is retiring after 2 terms. Democrats are nominating Abdul El-Sayed, and Republican Mike Rogers holds a 53% win probability, projected to win by just 0.6 of a percentage point. If Rogers pulls this off, he becomes the first Republican to win a Michigan Senate race since 1994, despite the GOP having won presidential and gubernatorial races in the state over that same span. El-Sayed is widely considered the weakest possible nominee Democrats could have chosen here, and that's a big reason Rogers currently holds the edge. Michigan tilts Republican. With the entire map filled in, the final projection has Republicans at 53 seats and Democrats at 47. With less than 3 months left until the midterms, the GOP is sitting in a genuinely strong position heading into election night, though Ohio, Michigan, and Maine remain close enough that any of them could flip the final outcome in either direction. Let me know what you think in the comments. Which of these razor-thin races do you think ends up surprising everyone when the votes are actually counted? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.